I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here with me. Cold War in Asia. Headline, Vladivostok. Russian Pacific Fleet Squadron, led by the guided missile cruiser Varyag, sails from Vladivostok within these last hours, headed to a military exercise, a joint exercise with China. Naval Interaction 2014. In this squadron, the anti-submarine ship Admiral Pantaleyev, amphibious ship Admiral Novelskoy, destroyer Bistri, and tanker Ilim, along with the seagoing tugboat Kalar. They're sailing for Shanghai. Rick Fisher, the senior analyst, senior fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center, is here. We're going to connect the dots because what you see in Ukraine is the emergence of the Russian Empire. What you see in China is the emergence of the Chinese Empire. These are two very self-confident powers in Asia. They share a continent, and right now they're sharing a military exercise. Rick, this was planned long ago, has nothing whatsoever to do with the confrontation in Ukraine or the confrontation in the South China Sea. I should not get concerned about this at all. It's just a coincidence of naval exercises. Good evening to you, Rick. Am I correct?
Oh, John, of course it does. This is actually a real historic turn in the Chinese-Russian relationship. It is the first time that they have decided to openly, militarily pivot, if you will, against the United States in a region of strategic interest to the United States, the East China Sea, where China is now locked in near combat with Japan over the Senkaku Islands and perhaps other Japanese islands. It's a small exercise, about a dozen ships, but it speaks volumes in terms of China's willingness and Russia's willingness to stand shoulder to shoulder against the United States in their most visible manner to date.
So, Rick, really what we have is a cleavage of the world system, basically, where you have China and Russia on one side, you've got the United States and Japan and its partners in Asia on the other, and essentially we're going to go back to a Cold War-like structure where you have two large coalitions facing off with each other.
Well, the worst part of the Cold War, I mean, the first part, when they were one big gang against us, this is a truly a major setback for American strategy and American foreign policy.
A regional power, I believe that was what the Obama administration said was Russia. They're regional power in the Black Sea. That's the Black Sea Fleet at Sevastopol. They're a regional power in Vladivostok, linked up with the PLA Navy out of Shanghai and the East China Sea. Rick, does one regional power meeting another regional power in two oceans, does that qualify as a global power?
Well, when they're armed with nuclear weapons, it can be, John. And the potential for China and Russia to cooperate on a range of military and strategic issues is also very much with us. That has had a waxing and waning history since the demise of the Soviet Union. It's now on an upswing. And if it increases, we could see what are today parallel programs between the two countries in strategic bombers, aircraft carriers, submarines, and space dominance systems turn into cooperative programs if they haven't already. And that's a real danger for the United States. If these two start sharing technology, or really Russia's technology for China's money in a big and major way, the United States is going to be hurting by the end of this decade.
Rick, talking about air defense systems, it's been reported that the Russians are prepared to sell their most advanced S-400 system to China. This would really be a game changer, wouldn't it? And essentially what you're seeing here would be probably co-development of air defense systems, because the Chinese are definitely going to take the first one apart and copy the hell out of it.
Sure, and that's what happened the last time, Gordon. The Russians sold 1,000, maybe 1,500, maybe 2,000 of the fourth generation S-300 to China, and for that price, China expected most of the technology for that system. So after the sale of a few more brigades or batteries of the S-400, we can expect that technology to migrate to China as well and set up the Chinese for buying the S-500, which will be a true anti-ballistic missile capable system.
Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, well we know, is due in Shanghai on May 20th for an official visit. Rick, can we take this seriously? Vladimir Putin visiting with the Russian fleet and the Chinese fleet in Shanghai. Can we expect that this will be a way of projecting power against the neighbors of China, the Sea of Japan, the South China Sea? Can we expect that Russia will not be turning its back on China because of China's local demands of its neighbors, just as China has not turned its back on China with its demands of its local neighbors in East Europe?
Well, John, no doubt. I mean, there are serious complications between China and Russia. China is looking wistfully at Russia's vast unoccupied Far East,
right.
and the Russians know this, and they held an exercise toward the end of summer last year. 120,000 troops. Didn't get a lot of play in the mainstream media, I should say, but I can assure you that the Chinese sat up and took attention, because the Russians are integrating early use of a new class of small nuclear weapons into their conventional doctrines and strategies. And this was very much on display in the Far East last year, I would imagine.
So we should put them down as frenemies.
For now, but a frenemy relationship that could really go bad for the United States and for the democracies.
Then why is Putin going to Shanghai? What's he want?
Well, he wants China to buy his petroleum. That's what he wants first and foremost. And he's willing to give them a lot of military technology if they pay his price and for a long period of time. It's our assessment in my organization that the Russians also know that once the Chinese are strong enough, they're going to turn on the Russians as well. But Putin is playing a very crafty game. He thinks he can be clever. He thinks he can ride the tiger, the dragon, I should say. Few have succeeded. I don't think he will either.
Rick Fisher, the senior fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center, Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. Gordon, my only regret is we can't see the rest of the century. I wish.
Come on, John. We're going to live that long.
I'm John Batchelor.